everyone, what's up? It's Ryan Quintel, and welcome to another QuintelDesigns.com video tutorial. Today we're going to be in Photoshop because we're going to be recreating the blur effect from iOS 7. So iOS 7 is the latest version of iOS at the time this video is being recorded anyway. And it's got this new effect where when you scroll certain applications, if they've taken advantage of it, you get a blurring effect to your list items or your text or your images. It's a really particular type of blur, and so I wanted to go through the steps of recreating that here. Now I've got this iOS 7 set up in my header, and you can see I put Al's name or Ale's name. I hope I'm getting this right. I know I'm getting it wrong, so I'll just plow through. I've put his name up at the top because this is certainly his work, and if you get a chance, I found him on the Inspiration Grid. It's a great website, and I'm going to put a link to his website and more of his work to go purchase some of these prints for yourself in the video description. Now, the basis of this effect really depends on your document setup. You can see I've got a header bar, it's got all the iOS 7 stuff inside of it, I've got a title, I've got a done button, but what I want to have is content that's longer than my actual mock-up, if you will. So I'm going to take the crop tool and just pull this down here. So you can see here I've actually got way more stuff kind of in the queue ready to scroll up past and into the header. That's really important because if you don't have any stuff, it's just going to look kind of weird back there when you get going. So I'll go back in my history and sort of reset that. Now, what I want to do is make a few adjustments. I'm going to go ahead and take my content. I'm just going to hold down Shift and press the up arrow so I can make sure it's behind that header. Yeah, it's plenty high now. The first thing is first. I need my header to be, well, transparent, see-through, or at least partially. So I'm going to go ahead and take the fill of this, assuming that it is just a solid color. I have it as a shape layer. I'm going to go ahead and take that fill and break it down to something like 90% is already pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bit more dramatic, say 87. Just those few percentage points makes the difference here as to what we're doing. Now, you want to take your entire set of content and you're going to go ahead and duplicate it. Now, why am I duplicating this, Ryan? Well, we're actually going to have two pieces of content that are linked to each other. One of them is going to be the blurred content. One of them is going to be the content that isn't blurred. But we want them in the exact same position, so I went ahead and just duplicated the group. Now, I don't need layers for the stuff that's going to be blurred, so we're going to deal with that like this. I'm going to take this new group that I've made, right-click, and convert it to a smart object. Now, this is essentially a smart object that I can go ahead and manipulate and update, and if I really want to save space, I could right-click and rasterize the layer. That's not going to make a huge difference. I'm going to keep it as a smart object because, well, I'm not worried about hard drive space at this point. So now I'm going to go ahead and go to Filter, Blur, and apply a Gaussian blur to this thing. So 1 pixel isn't going to cut it. And what I'm actually looking at is up here in the header. Let's see how it looks in the header. Not so much what it looks like in the body. 2, no. 3, 4. It's actually really blurred in iOS. I'm going to dial it up to 10. Yeah, see, 10 looks a little bit more like how iOS is actually showing it. I'll hit OK there. Now what I need to do is link this blurred stuff to the actual content that's underneath it. So I'm going to select both the group and the smart object, and I'm going to click on this little link, and that's going to link those together. So now if I click on one, and you can see as they move, I'll zoom in so you can see the sharp stuff peeking out the side. As they move together. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. I want that stuff to be linked as it moves up the chain, if that makes sense. Now for our navigation bar. Well, you can already see the effect is working when Photoshop's not whining about error messages. That's close, but it does a couple other things in iOS. For one, it makes things a little bit brighter too. So I'm going to go ahead and create a hue and saturation adjustment. And just bring the saturation up. And you can see that really makes the colors, like this red over here, pop through that white. For good measure, I might take that navigation bar down to, say, 85. Well, even maybe a little bit more. Let's try 80. 80 is a little dangerous. I'm going to go to 83. Just trying to find that happy balance. And of course, I think the actual number is probably closer to 90, but I'm not necessarily looking to create the effect exactly. What I'm looking to do is, in my mockup, be able to showcase off that blurred header, because that's what's important for stylistic purposes. So now that I have this sort of navigation bar, what I can do is take this shape layer, and it's important that you made it a shape layer. It's just a rectangle, so no big deal. I'm going to hold down Command and Option, and that's going to select just the masking part, and I'm going to drag it down to our content. And what you can see here is it's applied a linked shape mask and masked out just this part up here. I'm going to do the same thing to our adjustment layer. Now, only the stuff up here is brighter because I've masked out the rest of it. Now, selecting this up top has gotten a little hairy because I've got Auto Select Layer on, which means I can just click this layer and it starts pulling it around. You can see how blurry and saturated that stuff up there looks. Well, what I need to do is, if I'm going to grab this and move it around, you can see the header's not moving because I'm actually moving this linked content. What I'm going to do is uncheck Auto Select Layer and just select the content group. Then when I pull that, you can see it pulls with it the blurry stuff. That's right, but I don't want the blurry stuff to move. So here's how we deal with that. On this blurred layer, go ahead and unlink the mask from the smart object or the rasterized layer if you have it like that. Now when I select this and go to move it around, you can see everything gets nice and blurry. And as I drag up, I've got a really nice blurry effect. And I know I'm going way off the canvas, but I just want to see what some of this stuff looks like blurred. Look at that. So I can still see this guy's hair. You can kind of make out the faces. And iOS 7 does this blur to provide context to the user as to what is underneath certain layers. You can see, once you have that all lined up, it's basically an unlinked mask, a navigation bar shape layer, a hue and saturation layer that is not linked to anything, but does have its mask linked because it can just stay in place, it doesn't matter. And then content linked with a copy of the content. And again, make sure your content's big enough so that you can kind of scroll around and test out the effect. Pretty cool. As always, guys, leave your comments in the video section. Thank you for coming to Quintel Designs, and check out Ale Giorgini's work linked into the description. Thank you very much, and keep designing.